Hello and welcome to Nerdarchy. For nerds, by nerds. I'm Nerdarchy Dave, and today I'm hanging out with Jacob from Mini Domain Terrain, or is it Mini?
Mini terrain
I
domain.
always
It's a
do
mouthful.
that.
It's a mouthful. You got all the words just in a different order.
Yeah, that's my mo. To be honest with you, this the dyslexia coming through. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic, all things considered.
So you are a Twitch streamer, a YouTuber. You got some cool things coming up in the near future. You want to tell people, about yourself a little bit?
Yeah, I'll kind of hit on the that high level stuff like you mentioned, and we can dig into the things you want to talk about. Yeah, so I started mini terrain domain. I think this year, if I remember correctly, is going to mark mini terrain domain 6th year as a YouTube channel. I've been a pretty small channel for a long time. Earlier in 2019, I crossed the 10,000 subscriber mark. Um, so that was a pretty cool milestone to hit. Um, but I started out from watching people like DM Scotty, who, if people in the crafting world definitely know who DM Scotty is. And I started just building miniature terrain, but not the modular stuff, not the cardboard stuff. I started doing a mixture of things, and eventually transitioned and doing commission based high end dice towers that are very customized, sort of like an interactive terrain. And then about 2.5 years ago, I started streaming to Twitch with a Tomb of Annihilation campaign on. I think we started out on Monday nights, but we've been on Sunday nights for a very long time. And last night we just had our 67th session, and they are closing in on the end of that 2.5 year campaign in Tomb of Annihilation. But we also stream. We just wrapped up the first part of Waterdeep Dungeon Heist, Dragon Heist on Mondays. I stream a show called Legends and Legacies: Tales of Fandelver using the starter set and the new Essentials kit every other Tuesday, and then of course on Thursdays is sort of our one of what we call our flagship show, the Dawnbringers, which features DM Scotty, V the Crafting Muse, Jeremy from Erasmus Expeditions. We've got M from Dice on Ice, and we've got Dan Dillon, who some people know from the new voice of Sage Advice and Wizards of the Coast, and some guy that claims to be some kind of nerd artist, Ted or something like that.
Something like that.
Um, and that's sort of it still uses published materials, and but it's also kind of a highly homebrew improvisational stuff. Um, but that campaign's been going on for about a year and a half. We just started our 4th season, Heart of Nightfang Spire, which many people might recognize the name. We've sort of been going through some 3rd edition storylines, but with my own twist on it, incorporating the character backstories. Um, and then the other thing, kind of springing off of that, definitely keyed into all of the Twitch streaming stuff, is starting next week, Sunday. That's May 2nd through, or excuse me, May 3rd through the 7th, from noon to midnight every day. We are doing Jasper's Game Week. Jasper's Game Day is, of course, an incredible organization started in my home state of Michigan by Fenway, the Teen DM. And it is a charity that is dedicated to raising awareness and prevention of suicide through tabletop gaming, something that's very close to my heart. And we've been a partner with Jasper's Game Day for well over a year, and always promote them on our streams. But we did a streaming week last year that was pretty successful, and we raised about five to $6,000. This year, because of quarantine, we've been able to kind of roll in some of these canceled events. We've got games that are being run by Satine Phoenix, Todd Stashwick, with players Anna Prosser and Matthew Lillard. We've got Christopher Perkins running a game from 8 to midnight on Monday. We've got B. Dave Walters. We've got Kaylee Bray of Damsel's Dice and Everything Nice. Our Dawnbringers is going to close out the week, but before our game is Satine Phoenix is running a game. And we've got a ton of other celebrity guests. We've got lots of great sponsors that are providing some fantastic incentive-based rewards and prizes that we'll be raffling away during the whole week. But it's 5 days, 60 hours of games, and I'm going to be right here in the same seat for the entire 60 hours, producing the entire stream.
That is a long week.
That is indeed a long week. I don't work 60 hours in my day job usually.
I was looking at the lineup, and it's pretty impressive. I know I ran a game last year for you guys, and then I was like, oh, I'm surprised they didn't ask this year. And then I looked at the lineup. I was like, oh, I know why.
Well, and we're already talking for next year. We have so many people that are excited to be a part of it, about how we can expand it next year, do a lot more satellite events where, Nerdarchy could run games on the Nerdarchy channel, but funding in. And I mentioned that last year we raised about $6,000. We haven't even started the stream yet, and we've already raised almost $12,000 this year.
Oh, wow. That's impressive.
Yeah, we auctioned off a lot of the seats. So all 5 players that are playing the Chris Perkins game, they won auctions that ran for the first couple weeks in April. And Chris Perkins' game alone raised over $3,000 in auction bids, plus a lot of Adventures League certifications and custom things. We've got some people from the Adventures League organization that are running games, because Jasper's ties in really close with that. But it is going to be one heck of a week.
I suspect you're going to crush that goal.
Yeah, definitely. We definitely are going to. We've set a $15,000 goal for the actual stream itself, not counting what we've already raised. We're hoping to get $25,000 total for the week. And we are definitely on par. We're already at about half of that. So,
Are there any particular events for Jasper's Game Week that you're really excited to be producing, like above the rest? I mean, you mentioned some big names. You've got several people from Wizards of the Coast over there, I believe.
yeah, we've got Greg Tito is going to be in a game. Chris Lindsay is going to be in a game. Of course, Dan Dillon is a regular player in our game. Honestly, I love producing. I love running my games. I love streaming, and I try to put some higher stuff in with the production values of my own streams. I want them to be not only just fun for the D&D games, but fun to watch and to listen, to interact with. So I'm honestly looking forward to the whole week. We have 20 dungeon masters and 120 total people that are going to be on stream during that week, counting all the players and game masters. And I'm going to be the voice in their ear, talking to them beforehand, afterwards. I'll be letting them know through the Zoom chat that only they can see where we're at for goals. So I'd be lying if I said I wasn't really looking forward to producing Chris Perkins. He's one of the first dungeon masters that I listened to with the Acquisitions Incorporated stuff originally. So I'm very excited about that, and I'm always excited to run our Dawnbringers game. But yeah, I'm just excited to see throughout the entire week as we start hitting these goals and surpassing these goals, and having to go into and adjust that goal, move that up even further. It's really exciting. The energy that goes into it that really helps to keep me energized, besides the gallons of coffee that I'll be consuming that week.
Just go with an IV drip.
That might be the best thing.
So Kmo wants to know, how do we support this? There is links in the pinned post as always. The first 3 are just to find Jake on the web, and the last one, the 4th one, is a link to where you could actually donate. But also, like, tune in during the event. Look around on social media. I'm sure if they follow your Twitter, they'll find all the information they need. Uh, keep lurking his Twitch. It is from May 3rd basically to the 7th. So every day, just go over to the Twitch channel and you'll be able to check it out. And I'm sure the donations on stream, are they going towards the charity as well?
Everything that week is 100% going to the charity. We always fundraise for Jaspers with a direct link for them to be able to donate. So anytime you're in my Twitch chat, you can type !Jaspers and a donation link pops up, and I have one of those banners down below. And we also partnered with Initiative Coffee Company. There's actually a Mini Terrain Domain branded coffee that you can buy. And for every 12-ounce bag you buy, $3 of that goes directly to support Jaspers. But yeah, so that whole week, I actually take my own donation buttons for people to tip to me, and I change the hyperlinks so that everything directs towards the charity, because I don't want to make any money on my stream that week. I want everything going into Jaspers. And yeah, there's the link that you put in, that you provided, that I provided you, for the Tiltify campaign, which is where we're running it through. That'll actually host the Twitch stream. It has a progress meter, and that will have later this week the full schedule of games will also be displayed in that link. But yeah, you can follow me at MTD _ Jake on Twitter to stay up to date on when we're going to go live. The best thing you can do is go to the twitch.tv/mini terrain domain, hit the follow button, and turn on the notifications. Then you get notified whenever we go live, and hey, oh yeah, you maybe forgot about it. And at noon every day next week, you'll get those notifications.
So it's the Thursday night game you run with Ted, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that game is like huge. You got a lot of players, especially for a stream game.
Yeah, we have 6 players involved. We started out in season 1 with 4, and then Ted and I. So a lot of people may know, especially Nerdarchy fans, may know me from the monthly RPG Crate game that I've been a player in for 4 years now. I think 3 years.
Yeah, more recently you actually run the production because Ted's
yeah,
terrible.
and with this last season, I did volunteer to produce the stream, so I do produce that stream as well.
Well, thank you for that, because I am terrible at all this stuff, and Ted is worse. So
yeah, and like I said, I love doing it, and it's a super simple production. But so Ted and I had kind of become closer friends because of that, and had been talking often about getting him involved in one of my games. And we wrapped that first season of Dawnbringers, where we ran the Sunless Citadel, and we were moving into the Forge of Fury, and it was just a perfect place to introduce a new player and character. And so I talked to all the players, and everybody said, "Yeah, sure, let's check it out." And I was just telling Ted last week, I have a hard time remembering that he hasn't always been a part of the stream. And then in the 3rd season with Ghost of Saltmarsh, we've had a couple of guest stars come in. Kelly the Opera Geek has played a character in there, and then we had Dan Dillon come in for a couple episode arc as playing the Lurker in the Deep, Unearthed Arcana Warlock patron, and he was having a lot of fun with it, and we got to talking about it, and I invited him to become a part of that stream, and that's why we now have 6 players in our Thursday night game.
yeah, it's a fun group. So I'm sure, like, whenever you bring someone on, even for a guest spot, it's like I just imagine the camaraderie there, that they just want to glom onto the guests, and the guy and the guests want to glom onto them. So it just seems very unwieldy. I'm playing in a non-stream game, but it's over Zoom, and it's like 7 players. and we just added another one. I'm like, oh, this is going to be unwieldy as heck.
We have a really good link. Most of us have been playing, like I said, for a year and a half together in this stream. Um, but I've played a little bit longer with V and Jeremy and M. M in particular they're on, I think, 3 regular streams that I do, and we have played in each other's one shots and campaigns multiple times. Been friends for a few years. So we understand, we have that good rapport, and we kind of just, everybody just kind of fits in the flow. There's very little of people stepping on each other, and it just works out really well. I think I'm very fortunate in that way.
Yeah, I feel like when you play games online, it becomes like you go from you're playing this turn-based game to you're in life turn-based now in order to make it work, just because of the interaction with the
Yeah,
Zoom
definitely.
chat. But you get used to it. So there was a question from Joe: what is the best way to stream? That's very open-ended, Joe.
So I actually have a really good answer for that. Is if you go to youtube.com/mini terrain domain, I have a video how to stream D&D and tabletop RPGs with Zoom and OBS. And ever since quarantine started, my views on that on that video have quadrupled. It's a very simple tutorial video, where I just kind of take the things that I've been doing, that I've taught myself how to do over the last couple of years, and I show you how you can do it. There's a couple companion videos that show you how to make overlays, very similar to what you see here. Not to pat myself on the back, but I'm going to. I had a hand in the overlay we're in right now. So the I cover some of that stuff, and then I cover some of the technical stuff between what you need to do as far as setting up the stream, and having everything you need to produce it. But the killer these days is bandwidth, internet bandwidth. Everybody's using it now that they're home.
Yeah, that is problematic even for our own stuff that we do. Um, fortunately for me, I actually have really good internet, and I'm always breaking Ted's stones because he uses a crappy cable company that he should fire immediately. Um, but FiOS, Verizon, by far best internet, because where they might be similar to other companies for your download speeds, but their up speeds are so much higher. Like when I do the speed test, I'm in the hundreds on both.
Yeah, and that's what they don't tell you with Twitch in particular, is that Twitch requires a pretty chunky upload speed to be able to get a good clean broadcast. They say they can do it with 1 megabit per second upload. 3 is recommended, but I find if you have less than 5, you're going to have lag issues.
It's all a lie.
It is. It is.
Yeah, like the other because in our I guess in most areas you get like 2 choices for internet, and cable, and the other company tried to convince me. I'm like, no, your stuff sucks. Forget about it. It's not even close. I like I just did my download speed right now, and it's like 280 while streaming. So, and my upload is bouncing into the threes, so it's insane.
You got me jealous now. I don't even have that high.
Oh, it just dropped down. It's only 270. But I don't know, the weird things we geek out about as online. Who knows? So how many streams are you running right now? I heard you ramble off like 3 or 4.
So let's see. I run almost everything that I run is official Wizards of the Coast published material.
Yeah.
Um, as a low prep, high improv DM, it's easier for me to read through something, glance through it, And I lean super heavily on D&D Beyond. D&D Beyond is not a sponsor, but they have granted my channel insider access. So we run all of our streams through D&D Beyond. But I get, let's see, I got the Tomb of Annihilation campaign. We are finished with Waterdeep Dragon Heist, but we're transitioning into Dungeon of the Mad Mage. There's the Fandover stuff. There's the Dawnbringers, and then those are the ones that I run directly. And then there's the once a month RPG Crate game. Every other Tuesday, I'm over on Dice on Ice playing a character in Curse of Strahd. And then I play once a month over on Erasmus Expeditions in a homebrew setting called Momentum. And we're also running a mini campaign in Call of Cthulhu. We have an episode coming up this Wednesday night. Critical Hit Publishing just did a 1970s scenario called Highway of Blood. And one of the creators of that, the author, Alex from Critical Hit Publishing, is our game master in that. Or lore keeper, I guess they call them in Call of Cthulhu. So I lost track even as I was counting those off. We're somewhere around 8 to 10 that are going on, and I also have a couple guest streamers that come in. Right now, Alan from Check for Traps, CTF RPG, runs a Curse of Strahd campaign on my channel on Friday nights at 10 Eastern.
That is a lot of gaming. Like when I hear especially streamers, when I hear them talk about how many games they play, I'm like, I don't know. Maybe I don't like D&D as much as I thought I did. It's like, so we were just coming off of like where we had a run where all three of us played in a bunch of games. And our bunch of games was completely different than your bunch of games. Like Ted played like 6 games over 4 days. I did like 4. And I think Doug did 3 or 4. And we're like, oh, I'm tired of D&D now. I'm tired of gaming. I need a break. I've always been like, consistent though. Like we've always played over the past like 20 years, at least like one, where we do like once a week, and I guess that's what I was used to. So now it's like I'll have these jaunts where we do a bunch at once. It's still not streamer levels. Like I mean, I've done like 8 games over 9 days is probably like the most, and by that time I'm just tired. So do you like need to take a break? Do you like need to take like a week or 2 off at a point to like recharge your batteries? Or
absolutely we practically preach mental health awareness and self-care on Mini Terrain Domain. We always talk about the importance of mental health, and I'm very open with all of my players and dungeon masters that we have amongst our group. Of course, we always have our side chats, usually run through like Facebook groups. I've got a couple that are on Twitch DMs or Twitter DMs, but we're always very open with each other and upfront. And occasionally, when you see that a stream has been canceled, it's because the reason literally somebody in our game group can just say, guys, I just can't today. And we're like, cool, you do what you got to do to take care of yourself. And if we can play without them, we will. And if we can't, we say, hey guys, sorry, no stream tonight. We'll be back next week. And I've done that myself. And especially after a long run or a good stretch of something, we'll just say, you know what, we're going to take a break off, give everybody a chance to recharge. We always take 2 to 4 weeks off between seasons on the games where we are doing seasons. To give the players all that chance as a group. It's kind of, sometimes I think your players need permission to say, you know what, we're not going to play. You don't have to think about this game for a couple of weeks. Just take some time and do something else that you like to do, and then we'll come back to it.
But yeah, I imagine with it being streamed and people watch, you do feel more of an obligation to to show up, because it's one, just gaming in general. You have the GM and the other players, but then you have this added component of the people that watch and expect you to be there every week. So that's really cool. I know this. I don't know about you, but like this whole quarantine thing has my whole house like sleep schedule like completely out of whack. So like we game Saturday mornings. James in our house runs a game for us, and V's in that game. Goblin Kate. There's a Hunyo. There's actually a bunch of cool people in that game, and I was like, oh man, I went to sleep at like 6 in the morning. The game is at 11. I'm like, I'm not gonna do it. I set my alarm, it goes off, and I'm laying there. I'm like, oh, but I'm the cleric. I gotta go.
Definitely got to be there for the cleric.
I was
Cleric's work is never done.
The cleric's work is never done. I was so glad I did, though. I mean, I was tired, but I was glad that I did because it was a lot of fun. And at the end of that session, we were going to Barovia. So
Yeah, and it's kind of funny because there are certain days and certain games that sometimes even who I love Dungeons and Dragons and I love streaming. I'm a very extroverted person. I love being in front of the camera. Um, I'm sort of able to self-fulfill this prophecy or this dream of mine that when I was younger, I always wanted to get into broadcast television or radio. And then lo and behold, the technology makes it so I can make my own job. And, but there are times, like I said, where it's just like, you know what, I just need to eat pizza and sit in front of the TV streaming, Parks and Rec or something. And, but there are games too where, I know for many of us players, Dawnbringers has become our refuge from a bad week, where it's the opposite. If we've had a rough week, it's like I just want to get together with my friends and I want to play D&D for 2.5, 3 hours. That, and we almost always feel that recharge after spending that time with this group of friends, playing make believe for a couple hours, and that's just what for me. That's just one of the magical things about D&D.
we have me and Ted have a friend that games with us in person, and we've been gaming with him for like 20 years now. He's my daughter's godfather. Well, maybe only 15 years, but closing in on 20. Um, and he definitely like when he has a bad week at work, especially when we weren't gaming quite as regularly. I could expect that call. Hey, can we game this weekend? I need to kill shit. I had a bad week, or work is killing me, or something. So
Absolutely.
Juice wants to know, master of the game, can we expect how to run published modules tutorials on your channel? Man, he ain't got time for that. He's playing like 50 games a week.
So actually, that brings up a good point. By the way, hi Juice. I forgot to list that game because I wasn't able to make the most recent one, but I play in a monthly Descent into Avernus campaign that Juice DMs, streams it over on YouTube, and I play with Luke from the DM's Lair, and I play with Nate from WASD 20, and Juice's wife, Paula, and I forget what her handle is. I'm sorry, Juice, if you want to put it in the chat. But we play in a Descent into Avernus campaign. We all live in Michigan, so prior to quarantine, we would all go over to Juice's game room and play from there. But they played this Saturday. They played over stream. But yes, I have every intention of doing doing some more informational type videos. If it makes you feel any better, Dave, I'm bringing on board one of my players from our Monday night Waterdeep Dragon Heist campaign. My friend Dwight, also known as the Big Bearded Nerd. He lives like 15 minutes from me. We've been friends for years. He's officially joining Mini Terrain Domain and will become MTD Dwight. And he's going to be helping me with a lot of behind the scenes production stuff. So I will have time to do more videos and tutorials and things like that. I mean, I've got a stack of minis. I got a new series I'm doing called Review and Remix for WizKids Minis. Not officially for them, but those are some of the stuff that I'm using. And once we get on the other side of Jasper's game week next week, there'll definitely be a lot more content coming on the YouTube channel.
So you're working from home now. So is that saving you some time with the commute?
Absolutely. My commute right now is about 30 seconds, maybe 45, depending on the traffic in the dining room and at the coffee maker. Um, but yeah, normally when I work at the office, I've got a 45 to 60-minute commute because I live um, in a relatively rural community, and I work in a major market area here in Michigan.
Well, that adds up. You're talking about an hour and a half, 2 hours a day.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. It's a
you
huge saving.
never mind. Why don't we have more tutorials already?
Because I use that savings in the morning. I sleep during it.
Sleep is for the weak. No, that's great. You know what too? Like I just wonder after this thing ends, how many people will be like, "Yeah, I really don't need to go into the office every day, and we've just proven this. So let's renegotiate."
I I love going into the office. I love interacting with people. I work in a marketing department
Mm.
for a publishing company. So we're sort of the people that are always the most interactive in the office. Um, but I definitely like I said, I like not having that commute every day. Maybe I'll become seasonally work from home. In the wintertime, we get the same as you do. I'm sure you get a lot of the snows and everything
Not
where
anymore. We used to.
that 45-minute commute turns into a 2-hour commute when you get a lot of snow, and yeah, I'll just work from home those days.
Yeah, definitely. Joe wants to know what is. He had a couple questions. What is your favorite edition, and where did you start?
So I think it's should probably be pretty clear by now that fifth edition is my favorite edition. Um, I run all fifth edition published modules. Though that said, I did mention I'm running a 3E module in our new series, but I'm doing fifth edition tweaks and using fifth edition rules. I actually started playing D&D in the mid 90s when I was in the army with second edition, and I played with a group of friends when I was stationed at the 101st Airborne, and then when I did a couple deployments to Bosnia in 96 and 98, and we played a little bit. But then I didn't touch D&D until I think around 2011 or 12. A friend that I worked with had played all through every edition and kind of introduced me to fourth edition. But he did it by throwing me in the deep end. He said, "Here's my books. You should be our DM." And I had never DM'd before. So I kind of relearned how to play D&D and learned how to dungeon master with fourth edition. And I did that for, I want to say, a little under a year. And that's when I first caught wind of the D&D Next play test that would ultimately become fifth edition. And I picked that up and I have not looked back. I mean, I reference stuff from earlier editions, and uh, you know, fourth edition gets a bad rap a lot of times. But for what it is, I think it's still a great game, and I still use things from it. I use skill challenges in my 5e games all the time, and I use minions. But yeah, so that's kind of where I got started, and fifth edition is definitely my absolute favorite. I love that it's so easy to, like, I tell people all the time, I could literally, I have nothing. If I wasn't at home and I had nothing but my phone, I could run you a 3-hour adventure using a digital dice roller and just making stuff up. D&D Beyond makes that a lot easier to be sure. But even without that, I feel confident enough in my ability to run the game that I could basically run a pickup game anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, bounded accuracy makes it a lot more manageable, easier. I agree.
Yeah.
5e is my favorite as well. I started, somewhere in the 80s. So I started with 1E, and then the group that became our Saturday night group, which then kind of became Nerdarchy, was 2E. So, and then we've kind of just we've done maybe like hiatuses of like 6 months from time to time, but pretty much it's always been kind of like the same group, me and Ted, and so a couple other folks that would pop in and out over the years. So I feel like 5e is like the easiest to take from any of the other editions and run a game from. 4e being the hardest one to convert, but all the rest of them, I can almost just take them as is and pop them in. I've definitely done that with some Eberron stuff before we had any Eberron, and the numbers were just higher because it was all third edition stuff. But you could use you could do it one of two ways: either cut the numbers down, or you just used weaker monsters, and they were much more challenging for for the 5e group.
I honestly don't modify a whole lot from those other editions. Like the very first game I ever streamed was Chris Perkins' one shot called "Pray for Smiley Bob." It's still up on my YouTube channel. And if I remember correctly, it looks like I streamed with a potato. It's like really bad internet, really bad pixels everywhere. But we had a lot of fun with it. And it was a 4th edition adventure that I ran with 5th edition rules. And I ran for a charity stream later that year. The first ever adventure that Chris Perkins had published in Dungeon Magazine, called The Wards of Witching Way. And for everything that had 5th edition counterparts, I used the 5th edition stats, and it didn't matter what it was, because that was written for 2nd edition. If it was a 2e spell, if it was a 2e monster, I just described it and used it, because I like the idea that some of your monsters have access to magics that you don't. It adds an air of mystery if you can't go, oh yeah, they're just casting this spell or they're doing this thing. It's like, no, wait, how did they do that? I don't know what they did. And even with magic items, you get to create or use unique magic items, and sometimes give your players unique experiences and treasures because you're just pulling stuff as is out of the book.
That speaks to the fact that like a lot of the ways that we run the game is kind of similar because we do a lot of improv, and nothing exists in the game until you speak it, right, as the GM. And so using those different abilities, players don't know. Even if you use things that are in 5e, depending on how you describe it, they still don't know necessarily, right?
Right.
But taking from earlier editions, yeah, it's they don't know the difference between you adding spinning flavor and just using mechanics from a previous edition, more than likely.
Exactly. Unless you tell them.
Yeah, unless you tell them. Especially according to the latest like polls that Wizards of the Coast put out, because us old timers seem to be dying out. We were very low on the percentage. Now, I like to think that there's just so many more younger people coming into the game now. That's why our percentage is so low.
Yeah, I definitely think so.
That's pretty exciting. Did you see that on Twitter? It was going around.
Yeah, the one that if you were over 45, you didn't show up on their pie chart.
Yeah, I think they actually adjusted it though. Like before that, it was like just 40 and up, and then they added 45 and up. Yeah, so I get to exist for the rest of this year.
Right.
for halfway through this year, and then I'm out.
Yep, definitely. I mean, there's no hiding it. I've got well-earned grays in my beard, and I'm just hinting at what you've got going on. There's no secret of where we're at in those demographics.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a couple more questions I'll dig into the chat for, which I kind of lost track of. So Joe asked, what is the best way to publish a world? Like nowadays it's so easy compared to, back in the day where you needed someone to actually pick you up. There are so many different ways. You can start crowdfunding. You can go on the DMs Guild. You can go RPG drive-through to do it. You primarily do all official stuff. So no homebrew.
So it's kind of funny because I love running other people's published worlds. And I'm also a member of the Absolute Tabletop community, um, with the guys Matt Click, Michael Barker, and Tim and James Carney from Tabletop Terrors. They've had some very successful Kickstarters with their Oath of the Frozen King and Shadows over Drift Chapel, and most recently releasing the PDF of their Dead Man's Guide to Dragon Grin. And so I've done a lot of playtest work with them, and run a lot of their modules and stuff on my channel as well. But again, it's all other people's worlds. I do not yet have my own homebrew world because of that. I am in my early stages of working out a world that the concept, and I've talked about this in other places, so it's not like any big secret, but the loose concept is a world in which dragons are the noble elite, and they sit in the seats of power of all of the major cities, and all of the classes are essentially derived as from going to academies. So I call it Dracademia, where all of the deans of the colleges of the various schools are dragons. But there is some major conflict in this world between um, the dragons and the giants, and so that's kind of where I'm working on, and taking what I've learned from people like Absolute Tabletop. The place to start to build that world out is to just start running one shots and mini campaigns in that world and figure out what works and what doesn't, and then just keep chipping away at it. But like you said, Dave, there's publishing anything in the RPG space is, relatively speaking, simple to do in this day and age because there's so many great tools available out there. Whether you're publishing homebrew monsters, items, and whatnot through D&D Beyond, or you're publishing adventures and things like that on Drive Through RPG and the DMs Guild. Um, a couple years ago, I think it's been over a year at least now, almost 2 years ago, I co-published a adventure called module called Adventure Mixtape Volume 1 with Kelsey Dion of the Arcane Library, Burling's Beard, and Sharang Biswas. And we each did an adventure that they kind of worked together, and we called it a mixtape because it had we each had a theme song that went with our adventure, that we had commissioned.
You're not dating
And
yourself at all with that title.
no, not at all, not at all. But it's a fun little adventure that's out there, and it was relatively easy to get it done. We just all worked together on a schedule, and then we said we're going to publish it, and then we did, and then people started downloading it. So, relatively speaking, pretty easy to do.
So Matt wants to know: are you ever going to publish Tomb of the Mummy Lord? Which, by the way, that looks amazing when you do
So,
that setup, or the magical beard oil.
so it's funny because, as you know, I just got done saying how easy it is to publish the materials. The hard part is writing the materials. And Tomb of the Mummy Lord, anybody that's known me for a little bit, they know Tomb of the Mummy Lord. I believe, if I remember correctly, that Matt played in a Brigade Con game with Tomb of the Mummy Lord that I ran a couple of years ago. It is a full size 24-inch by 24-inch base 3-level tomb that I built from scratch, and I wrote a module that goes with it. I've run it over almost 40 times now at online and at gaming conventions, and the intention was, and still is, when we finally can do Nerdarchy Con, that I will be bringing the Tomb of the Mummy Lord along with a new companion adventure that is the Journey to the Tomb. So it's basically a desert themed adventure, and we'll have a lot of scatter terrain and stuff involved with it. But so that was the long way of still saying yes, I will publish it. I just haven't gotten to it yet, but also one of the reasons why I'm bringing my friend Dwight into Mini Terrain Domain to help me with that. The other one being the magical beard oil is an adventure I've run a couple times with a crazy snake oil or beard oil salesman that there's something not quite right about the beards that people are growing with this magical beard oil.
Nice. So, the Networking convention will be happening.
Yep.
Since you brought it up, it's just going to be happening the same weekend, 2021. We leapfrogged the year ahead just because, well,
Yep. And then
apocalypse.
I'm even more excited in a weird way because it gives me that much more time
Yeah.
to procrastinate building stuff.
And I mean, a bunch of the folks have already said they've committed to moving with us to 2021. We'll be getting into more information with that probably within the next couple of months. Right now, we just have to get through all this nonsense. But what are you gonna do? We figured with it, the quarantine might be done by the end of August, but we're like, people are gonna need more time to recover financially and get themselves together, and we want people to be safe and just all kinds of craziness and uncertainty with even with like vendors, not necessarily the vendors that would come to the convention to vend, but the vendors we'd have to hire. It's like, will they even be in business come October? And did we give them money or not? So it's
Right.
like,
Yeah. I do not envy you all of the things that go on, that go into, um, just planning and executing a convention of that scale. But I wasn't surprised and am in full support and just as excited to be there in 2021
yeah.
as I was to be there in 2020. So,
We were lucky. The venue was willing to work with us, and that's where we had put out the biggest amount of money. And I really feel for these conventions like Dragon Con. Like Dragon Con is totally screwed because they're in it's supposed to be run in an insane state where they're not going to shut down. So Dragon Con will not be getting their money back. Like you might see the end of Dragon Con. Who knows? Because of that, it's brutal.
yeah.
And most of these events that we have that are coming up, like people are wondering why they aren't canceling. It's because they can't cancel until like a state shuts down so that they can actually get out of their contracts.
Exactly.
So it's brutal, unfortunately, but we'll get through this. We've seen Gary Con figure out some things and some other conventions figure some things out. Even the site we were using, Tabletop Events, they were just totally crushed by this whole thing, and they seem to be working it out anyway. But it's good that we have a strong community that kind of comes together.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's been amazing to see how everybody's been able to adjust with online streaming. I mean, that's the whole reason that we have the caliber of guests coming that we do to this year's stream week for Jasper's Game Day is because they were scheduled to appear at various Jasper's events around the country that wound up being canceled. And um, so, and with everybody home during quarantine, you can kind of go, look, do you want to do this thing instead? I know you're going to be home.
Yeah.
You can't tell me you're not going to be at home.
Yeah, that is so true. Like even like we're playing it in the stream game we're playing, we're kind of discussing like, it's supposed to just be like a one shot or two shot. We're like, I don't know if you want to keep going. We're all in quarantine and don't have anything better to do.
Exactly.
Kind of deal. So, what are you gonna do? So we have a game related question. Hastings 33. What is your honest opinion of the Artificer? Is it strong or weak? So how do you feel about kind of like that Arcana Punk being added into the game?
I admittedly have little experience with it because it's one that's been kind of chucked in on the tail end. And all of my games are pretty much already in motion. So I haven't had a lot of chance to experiment with it either as a player or as a dungeon master. But flipping through it, I mean, I've always been of the opinion since I've been running that you can you can pretty much I can pretty much deal with just about anything. One moment.
Yeah, I totally get that, and I'm the same way. Like people are like, there's certain things that they're like, I will absolutely not like let that in my game. But I'm like, everything has good and bad.
Yeah.
Don't die on us, Jake. Uh,
I've been talking for an hour. I'm getting a little dry throat.
yeah. Um,
Um,
Go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say though, I'm very open to people coming in and bringing in uh, these official classes and race combinations. Um, I just adjust. I just make adjustments on the fly.
I know some people are like insane about things like there will not be flight at first level, and I'm like, whatever. Just hope no one casts sleep on you.
Right. I had that happen where somebody used flight and they stole a mount is what it was. And they were flying up above and they were stealing this, they stole this mount. I think it might have been a griffin or a oversized bird. I don't remember exactly. But they were knocking out the enemies and then they got hit with a sleep spell. And they came crashing to the ground and they had specified that they were 200 feet in the air.
Yeah,
And they were like level 3 and I'm like, "Oh
you're
dear."
dead.
So yeah, there's always in-game, ways to deal without nerfing or I definitely don't believe in punishing characters and players for the choices they make. I do a yes but sort of approach.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can do this thing, but there's probably going to be consequences to it, or there's a potential for something bad to happen. All of my games, I tell my players every time you're playing in a living world. So you feel free to stand outside that dungeon door and spend 20 minutes debating, is it just a door and how are you going to open it? But if you're talking in character and you're not specifying that you're whispering or anything, I'm making perception checks on the other side of that door. Or maybe the door's making perception checks. It just depends. So and I do this a lot and it's not you guys are taking too long. It's enough time has passed. Somebody would have investigated or something happens and they get interrupted because somebody happens by or an encounter occurs or somebody just happens to open up the door, whatever it is. There's always things going on in the world. Um, and I don't see the point in telling somebody they can't do a thing that they want to do when that's the whole point to D&D, is having fun with it.
Yeah, my approach is definitely, I don't know, roll some dice, let's see what happens. Like, just because you want to do something silly doesn't mean I'll allow you to try it and we can see what happens. But if it is something that doesn't make sense and is kind of incongruent with the way the world works, then you may be punished for it. But it won't be me punishing you. It'll be your decisions that do so. You know, like
Yeah, absolutely.
like the example of if you are playing a flying character in a low level game, well, if you're flying around, that makes you more of a target than other people. You're just like there, so you may draw more aggro from ranged combatants or from the spellcaster, you know
Yeah, exactly.
or and also things like if you're fighting intelligent monsters and you're playing the cleric, and my monsters or enemies see you constantly putting together the people that they've been fighting, then eventually they just stop attacking those and go after you because you're the biggest nuisance to them. So
Yeah, I love the idea, especially when you have a large party like we do with our Dawnbringers game, where you've got 6 people taking a group of monsters and spreading your attacks out tactically amongst all of the players because you want to, quote unquote, be fair or whatever. Um, it actually imbalances your encounter and you're not necessarily playing to the intelligence if they are intelligent creatures. I like using tactics where an enemy might look for who's not wearing armor, or who seems to be the slower one, or if they've been fighting a lot, who's the one that looks weak. That's a pretty, especially for feral creatures, that's the way of nature. Go
Yeah.
for the weakest creature and gang up on them. You got, say, 3 vampire spawn and you're moving through a vampire's lair. They're crawling around on the ceiling. You don't even know they're there. And all 3 of them, they're smart enough to attack a single target and take it down quickly than to spread out and go after the most heavily armed and armored uh, character.
Yeah. So I guess unintelligent creatures like animal intelligence. Usually with those, like my default is it attacks whatever attacked it last. Whatever the source of pain was. But also with those kind of monsters, if it drops a player, its immediate reaction is to then try and flee with it.
Oh yeah.
So
grab a hold of an arm or a leg and start pulling. Get out of there with its kill.
yeah, and which is funny. It just makes me think of an encounter that happened at my house the other day. So we recently acquired a raccoon that's been coming around and stealing our outside cat's cat food. And so it was on the front porch eating the cat's food, and the cat like took a swipe at it because the food bowl was by like where the cat likes to sleep, and she was kind of pinned. And that cat is already kind of aggressive towards other animals and doesn't like them. So she took a swipe at him, and this like raccoon is just like stuffing his face. The only thing the raccoon didn't even look at her, just slides its body away from her more and just keeps stuffing its mouth.
The best thing about that story, Dave, is you were well into it before I realized you were talking about real life and not a game. Because also in D&D, you can start a story with, "We just acquired a raccoon."
That is so true, especially if you're playing with younger players. I feel like they just love acquiring pets and creatures. Ted has a whole game that's based around that.
V is our critter hoarder. Right now, she's only got the her Bard Ranger Cantriel has a pseudo dragon, or fairy dragon. Sorry, a fairy dragon that is her companion, but has already been looking at, can I have this? Can I have that?
Yeah.
Just remember, you got to care for these creatures too.
We're playing in a game with Esper the Bard, and Megan Hardy is one of our players. She runs a out school program that's D&D. She runs like 70 hours a week of D&D for kids.
Wow.
And like she's like, yeah, like all of the kids always want to acquire the animals and monsters as pets and attack the NPCs.
Yeah, that seems to be like the default nature of young players.
And they like to steal. They like to do like things that they can't do in real life. And
yeah, all the stuff you normally get in trouble for.
Yeah.
All of a sudden you give them and get, wait, you mean I have a sword and I have a really good ability to steal? Yeah, I'm going to steal everybody's stuff.
Yeah, well, you know what? Even like, so I call it the family game, but it's like, it's my son, my nephew, my wife, and one of my son's friends. And it's like the very first session, he ends up running out of the tavern after a failed pickpocketing attempt and hiding on the roof where there were some pigeons. So immediately he's like, I want to try and befriend the pigeon. So now the group has Jeremy, the pigeon, which the group I think likes Jeremy more than the character that befriended Jeremy. So one of the things I did, like, I gave Jeremy a like a falconer's hood, but it turns it into it makes Jeremy act the same as a figurine of wondrous power. So I forget which one. I think maybe the Serpentine Owl is the stats that we use. But, so many hours a week, he can turn Jeremy into a giant pigeon.
That's awesome.
So, yeah, well, players, you never know what they're going to do. And
Yep.
that just keeps it fun. I love when you have players that do stuff as opposed to, I've got one group that I've played with, and I played with a lot, where they really do stuff, and even the players that do want to do stuff, like they're always afraid to do it and take away from table time. Where I'm like, at least if they did it and sucked the rest of the group into it, things would be going on. So you always have to like pull that group along to get them to go on adventures essentially. Where the other groups I have, it's like they're like ADHD all over the place and just nonstop. But I love that.
Yeah. Yeah, it can be tough sometimes, but I find for what I've learned is for me personally, when you have people that don't come up, like they're not, uh, they don't take the initiative, so to speak, to make things happen, is that's when I have an NPC come running up to them to talk to them about something. Um, and in the scope of the character, ask them questions. It might even be just asking for directions to something and then putting that NPC in front of them. And then later they see this NPC somewhere else, or maybe they're in trouble. It helps to kind of, in some cases, I feel like I'm throwing a lasso around them and
Yeah.
dragging them along. But sometimes that's what it takes.
Yeah, and definitely that's what I end up doing with that group a lot, which it works out too because it goes in different directions. Like that group, there was a NPC called Moms, who had lost. She's just a like crazy old woman that was wealthy, that had lost her husband and her sons to adventuring essentially, and basically became the patron to these goblin juggalos that were entertainers and they would perform. So she would always show up with like treats for them and pay them, and eventually like kind of adopted them into her house. But like over the course of playing this game for a couple years, like that character kind of became integral, and like towards the end I had her pass away just of old age.
Oh man,
Which yeah,
build
because
them up and then rip their heart out.
yeah, but you know what? Like she was, but then it was kind of cool because then she left everything to them.
Very cool. I love
So
that kind of stuff.
yeah, so like it gives it a little more grounded, fun things, and like players always have like these tragic backstories with no family. So in this case, I kind of inserted an NPC that was like that became their family. So
That's so cool.
that is the fun part of this game, like doing things like that and telling stories.
Yeah, all of my games have a shared world. So I have a character in Chult that their major foil. They were a part of an organization called the Weeping Friars, and Brother Mateus was one of the um, people at this monastery who was their primary antagonist. And several sessions ago, around the time I think they were level 10 or 11, they got into a big boss battle with him and wound up killing him and his two warlock companions. But then in our Dawnbringers game, I established in a scene that Dawnbringers takes place about 20 years before the Chult game by having that same character as a young acolyte be the one that administered a life-saving ritual to the paladin. And it was an inside track for viewers of both campaigns and for the player M, who plays that Asimir Warlock in Chult and got to see that character show up in the other game.
Oh yeah, that's what I was going to ask if there was a connection.
Yeah, so I'm always doing that kind of thing where I have certain lore. So I guess in a weird way, I have been world building all along, but I have certain lore that shows up. Like the Evangeline is a sailing ship that I built, and there's a video on my channel about it, and it shows up in games all the time. It's the Dawnbringers ship right now, is the Evangeline.
How long did it take to build that ship?
I think that one was like 40 or 50 hours.
Yeah, I bet it does show up in your games all the time.
Yeah, heck yeah, I spent a lot of time building that thing and
Yeah.
making up around it. Why create new stuff all the time when I have ready-made things? And by having a shared world, you can just easily keep bringing these things in and let the players add to your lore with the things that they do.
No, I absolutely agree with that. So mostly I run Theater of the Mind, but if I was a crafting DM, I feel like it would just turn me into a tyrant Be like, oh no, I spent all this time putting this together. You're going through here one way or another.
Oh, I told you I've run Tomb of the Mummy Lord like 40 times.
Yeah. I
My
don't
poor
care.
son's been in it like 5 times.
I don't care if I have to have a horde of gnolls hog tie you and drag you through this dungeon.
No matter where you go north, Tomb of the Mummy Lord. You go south, Tomb of the Mummy Lord.
Yeah.
You go to the Underdark, it's Tomb of the Dark Mummy Lord.
Yeah. You wake up from camping, there it is, Tomb of the
Yep.
Morning Lord.
You're in the desert. There's a pyramid.
But that's interesting. So what have you learned from running the same adventure 40 times? Do you have a takeaway?
If anything, it's reinforced the fact that there's no accounting for what 4 to 6 individual players will do when put together in the context of the game. You cannot even begin to imagine how they're going to approach certain things. I've made changes in the module directly related to things that people have done over the last couple of years because I never thought of it. And people are constantly solving the puzzles and encounters in ways that never occurred to me. And at this point, I've got something like 160 hours of experience running this adventure
Yeah.
that I'm constantly making little tweaks to it because I never even thought of that.
The only thing I think of close to that is Keith Baker did this thing where he like traveled around the country and ran the same adventure every week in a different spot for a different group. He basically couch surfed across the country, and I think so. Like his deal was like he would run a game for you and your friends. You run a game for him and your friends, and you had to show him something like about your town or something. So he was talking kind of about the same thing. I think you may pass him because I
Very
think
well.
so. After the year, I think you retired that adventure. But the Mummy Lord is less portable.
Yeah, I'm working.
Huge.
I'm part of what I want to do for it is to make it a little more portable. Um, in designing a carrying case for it that actually looks like the storage crate that you would find like in the warehouse at the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark. Um, because it is unwieldy to transport a foam pyramid.
You just got to build
Um,
basically a triangle box that's hinged, right? You just pull the pin at the top, everything falls away, and bam, there it is.
that would be fantastic. And then when it opens up, it's actually each point of the pyramid is is its own section of terrain.
Oh yeah. So we are past the hour mark by a
Oh
bit.
wow, it's been an hour already.
That goes by fast. What do you want to say before we head on out?
So first of all, I just want to thank you for inviting me on. This has been a lot of fun. I love that over the years I've gotten to interact with you and with Ted and just Nerdarchy more. Um, and I just want to invite everybody to check out Mini Terrain Domain on Twitch. In particular, you want to be sure to follow and click the notification bell for May 3rd through the 7th from 12 p.m. to 12 a.m. every day. Dungeons and Dragons. There's a game from noon to 2, a game from 2 to 5, a game from 5 to 8, and a game from 8 to midnight each day. Tons of sponsors such as and supporters such as Nerdarchy, Wormwood Gaming, Hero Forge, just to name a few. And we are giving away tons of digital products as well as things like dice sets, dice vaults, gift cards, all kinds of stuff as we reach certain donation goals. And there's lots of incentives tied to the donations themselves. If you donate a certain amount, you can get your own Jasper's Game Day t-shirt to show your support. We have banners that you can put on your Facebook and Twitter profiles when you donate. But all of that money is going to raise to fund suicide hotlines and crisis centers around the country. And we'd love to have you just come watch. I mean, you're already at home. In most cases, you're already going to be home during that time. Turn on Mini Terrain Domain and listen to some amazing game masters and players as we raise money for this great cause.
So there is a question that came in just now. Where, when will we be able to view schedules for Jasper's Game Week?
Be sure to watch at MTD_Jake on Twitter. That's my Twitter handle. This week we will be publishing the actual game schedule and the link to our Tiltify campaign, which I believe you've put down in the information box there on this video. That all of that information will be there because we realize some people are going to want to prioritize their time.
Yeah, absolutely. And, that's just a lot of gaming to ingest.
Oh, yeah. I mean, believe it or not, last year we did 40, it felt like 40 years. We did 40 hours, and there were about 4 or 5 people that were at every game all day, every day. They were in the chat.
Yeah, that requires an iron ass. I don't think I can sit that long. But anyway, thanks for coming on, Jake. I really do appreciate it. And for everyone else, until next time, stay nerdy.
Stay nerdy.